What is up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another live stream. That is 111 consecutive weeks of the Camera Junkie live stream. And as always, I want to thank you for taking the time and hanging out here with me. If you can hear to my voice, I'm a little giddy, and the reason why is because during the countdown, I've been laughing the entire time because I thought I messed up, and then I realized I messed up a couple of times, and then allowed me to realize that I hadn't messed up at all. So let me break this down for you. As I'm setting up everything for the live stream, I thought I had hit go live to start breaking down the countdown. And as I see the countdown going, I believe that it is counting down live, yet we were actually not broadcasting, or I wasn't broadcasting. So as the countdown is going down, it actually starts up and I get into my entire, like beginning half of the, my opening statement, so to speak, of the Camera Junkie live stream. And as I'm doing it, I realized that my microphone wasn't connected and that none of the music was being broadcast throughout the entire countdown, because of the simple fact that when I restarted my computer, I didn't double check to see if the Rodecaster Pro actually had connected when I did the restart. And it didn't. So because it didn't connect the Rodecaster, it didn't recognize both the music or the microphone. And I'm over here thinking that I messed up on the fly, and I'm fixing it as we speak. And then as soon as I get everything up and running, I see that nothing is happening, and Ecamm is telling me to actually go live. So I just started laughing, and I'm like, at first I thought I had no microphone, right? And no music for the intro. Then I'm thinking I'm fixing it on the fly, to then realize that I hadn't even hit the live button, and I was doing this all by myself before anyone would have known. So if I didn't mention it to you, nobody would have ever known. But there you go. I had to just be upfront because I was just laughing too much, because I was thinking, I'm over here trying to make everything as smooth as possible, and I'm not even live yet. But with that being said, let's see what's up. Let's say what's up to everyone here in the crew. Let's see who actually stopped by. Right off the rip, we have Mr. Paul Duncan. And as normal, for those of you who are here on the weekly, you realize that I have to unlock the scene, fix the size of the comment. I'm gonna get that right one of these days. I promise you. One of these days I'm gonna have the comment set from the beginning. Okay, now that that's set and centered, We're gonna lock the scene, and we should be good from here on out. All right. We also have Randy in the house saying hello to everyone. Dee's in the house saying door kicked in. Appreciate you. We also have Gretchen saying hi to everyone. All right, everyone's saying what's up to each other. And if I didn't mention it before, my name's Lewis, also known as Mr. Camera Junkie. And if it so happens to be your first time here, please introduce yourself in the chat so that you can get the nice Camera Junkie crew welcome. As you can see, everyone just, saying hi to each other. D says, my live stream yesterday was Bourbon City. LOL. My mods are not quite at the Paul level, though. It says, I was needing people sent to YouTube correctional officers heaven in real time. I could just imagine. And Paul's over here laughing. Oh, that's funny. And Paul is saying, warning, viewing this stream is at your own risk. Mr. Camera Junkie in his subsidiaries or his mods are not responsible for any negative impact on your net worth in your wallet, if you didn't get that. Law is in the house as well, saying hello to everyone. And Kimbucha, Kim, nice to see you here. Says swinging by to say hello. Hope you're doing good, Lewis. Same to y'all in the chat. Oh, thank you for saying hi. I hope that you and your family are doing great. Plus, Ecamm Beta says the chat is now open, which lets me know I'm live. That's very true. And, for those of us who are actually using beta, all the goodies that are coming just around the corner. And that's something that I did want to mention to you guys. If you haven't done so already, which I wouldn't know why, but if by chance you have not been utilizing the power of Ecamm, I highly suggest you really look into it pretty soon. And I don't have an exact time or date, but I just know it's getting very close to the release of Ecamm 4.0, and that is going to be next level. That's the best way that I can put it, next level. And FYI, I'm already using it, and it's incredible. Freaking phenomenal. The way they have things set up here now. But if you're using beta, you're seeing a lot of the same things that we're going to be implementing. So those of you might know or have the sneak peek, but if not, you're missing out. Definitely missing out. All right, everyone's saying. Oh, that's such great news. Gretchen just says, Lewis, I got my Lightroom catalog back finally. And that was a question and conversation we had a long time ago. So I am so glad that you were able to recover those images. Oh, that means you got even more to share now. So that's going to be great. And Paul is reminding everyone that if you do have a question for me at any time, whether it be what I'm talking about or something completely off, just remember to put a Q colon in front of any questions that you might have. Because going back to it, full circle, with the power of Ecamm, I'm able to look at my, messages in chat. Not only can I bring them up on screen, but I could do so much more, including even modify and, adjust, adjust the comments. But that's getting to the next level. One of the other things that I can do is actually search for them. So before I close everything out, I make sure that I put the Q colon in front in the actual search query, and it brings up all the questions or anything that might have that reference point, just so that I make sure that I don't miss your question if you put it in chat. All right. Says, hey, Lewis, all the cool new car channel. Oh, she is snitching on me big time. She done snitched on me big time. It says, hey, Lewis has a new cool car channel. Check out Project Car Junkie. She'd say to put the link. You guys could just find it, but if you definitely got the name, but you definitely sold me out, Gretchen. Well, I would just tell you, if you're interested in car things at all, I'm a big car junkie as well. I guess being Puerto Rican and everything like that, always, I've talked to Gretchen about this, you know, that I've been in the kind of like the street race scene, going back, you know, 20 something years at the turn of the century. And yeah, sounds crazy, right? When you say things like that, the turn of the century back in 1999. So basically it's a channel where I want to put my skills, you know, upgrading my mechanical skills as well, to the test and see where it goes from there. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And what I'm doing right now is just basically documenting the restorations that I'm doing to my current vehicle to see if I potentially have the ability to restore a lot of, you know, other future projects, or yeah, something like that. I think I said it right. But projects in the future that I have in mind, like it's all based around me getting my hands on my old Toyota Celica Supra and rebuilding it. But enough about that, because trying to kind of not mix the worlds, right? Even though it's the same person, but I'm just trying to find the car enthusiasts that are just like myself and let the channel like speak for itself, so to speak, you know, like let that grow and see what happens. I'm having a lot of fun, and a lot of things that I've mentioned here before, and using that as a reference point, that just you gotta kind of do what you do. What is going on? Oh, I think that was me. Apologies. I'm like, it kept clicking me out of Ecamm Live. But anyways, I digress. That I'm just basically doing what I would normally do with my vehicle, right? But now, like I said, I'm just documenting it, and just another way of pursuing my passions. Anyone who's heard me speak on this live stream always knows that I kind of reference all of my photography things back to car parts or car analogies, and it's just because it's inherently part of who I am. So that's why I decided to take on this new challenge as well and start a new YouTube channel doing that. And that's also just to sharpen my skills as well, both on this channel and the other. So I'm taking two completely different perspectives on them, but it's something that I'm using to just learn always. So 2023, that's my new project as well, on top of all the other things that I have going on. So okay, Paulo's over here saying, if you want to know what's going on in Ecamm Live 4.0, check out the list at Ecamm. Oh, he dropped the link. Awesome. Marine X is saying, I changed comments yesterday. It is funny, right? When you can literally like open up a comment. And the funny thing is that Miss Diana Gladney does it like every Friday on her help live stream. And I always find it hilarious. She's just super funny. And the way she does it, like she's like, hold up. You speaking some nonsense. So we're going to have to correct this. And she does it live on it. It's just so much fun. But that's the power of Ecamm. Like, not only is it a powerful production, you know, program that allows you to do so many things, but it's also a lot of fun to do so, right? To be able to just hit a button and be able to change scenes completely, and then have them completely automate those scenes and just have them switch out as I, you know, check out comments. Gretchen is over here saying, my drag racing days were early mid 70s. Yeah, I know. And I've loved the conversation that we have, and the fact that someone that understands the car culture, which, hey, you know what? Today is funny because I didn't really have a podcast thing set in mind. I was like, I'm just going to go live and hang out with the crew, because I'm just wasn't able to establish something or have a subject matter that I really wanted to talk about. And I have at least 8 episodes that I need to edit before that starts going live as far as the recordings for the podcast goes. So I decided that today was just going to be like a hangout, and it's turning out to be awesome. We're just talking about everything, including other channels. Okay, we have a question here. It says, how easy or hard to do a one-man show doing interviews? By the way, wifey is Boricua and I'm Mexican-American in AZ. Oh, that's cool, man. Well, huepa for the Puerto Ricans out there. And look, Dr. Elo literally says it because 111 episodes is not enough. Wepa. But he just said wepa as well. That's so funny. And he's saying hi to everyone. Okay, so how easy or hard is it to do a one-man show doing interviews? By the way, wifey is Boricua. Okay, so the question is, how hard is it to do a one-man show doing interviews? It's funny because we were kind of talking about it, but we didn't touch on it today in a, like mastermind group. Was speaking with Doc Rock earlier today, and we were mentioning kind of the similar things, but that to me, I've always found it to do a one-man show to be easier for the reason that I could always depend on me. So I don't know how to basically say it, but hey, right? Why try to sugarcoat it? I knew that I can rely on myself, and I knew that the reason why we've reached 111 weeks consecutive of the live stream is because I can count on me, and I was able to set up the Saturday night live streams to the point where I knew that I could be consistent. Now, that time frame for me makes it very difficult for someone else to join me in this particular time frame, as far as being like a on-screen guest or host, so to speak. And because I was doing it completely on my own, having a one-man band, so to speak, a solo live stream / podcast was the easiest for me because I didn't have to put the burden of my schedule on anyone else. Now, if it's someone that's doing a, I would say more like a podcast. Let me make sure that was the correct. It just depends on how you want to do it. If you have a set schedule, right? A set schedule of a time that you're going to go live, it probably wouldn't be the most conducive for an interview type of show. For the interview type show, I will tell you to make it successful and easiest for one person to do it, it would probably be that you, just like me, like I took all the burden of being as consistent as I have been, right? And that is 100% dependent on me, because if I don't show up, it only falls on my shoulders. But if you're trying to get as many interviews as possible for as many people as possible, then you're the one that I think should be flexible, right? I think you're the one who needs to have more of an open schedule to be able to like adapt to the guests that you're trying to have on your show, the people that you're trying to interview. So let's say you're able to, get in contact with a high profile person that is particular in the niche that you're dealing with. So if you were able to do that, but then he only has Wednesdays available for you to actually interview him or her, then at that point, I would tell you, you're the one who needs to be flexible, record the interview, and then release it at your time. What I've been doing is that beginning of just like December, on episode 100 of the live stream, I started recording podcasts right within the live stream itself. And that is kind of like the example that I can give you, because once that's all said and done, what's going to be going out as the podcast is literally not the beginning, not the intro, not the conversations, and not the Q&A. It is that middle chunk of the information, the soliloquy, so to speak, that's right in the middle that I'm going to edit and produce as the podcast. Because I'm on episode 111 and I took, like New Year's and Christmas off, I have 8 episodes already recorded from the live streams ready to be edited. And once they start getting edited, those are just going to be the episodes, allowing me to have basically 8 episodes is basically giving me a 2-month buffer, right? A 2-month gap between my first upload to my current recording. So I would do that with the interviews. So let me try to summarize it. What I would do is I would be the flexible one when it comes to the, scheduling of the interviews. depending on the availability of the guest that I want to bring onto my show, is depending on how I'm going to be flexible to take the time that's available from them, whatever time is available from them, and record the session. Once you have the recording, then you would go ahead and edit that, and then you can release it at your leisure. But I would probably tell you that if you're starting out, I would do that same thing. I would have 3 or 4 interviews recorded and already in the bag, so that it gives me time to be flexible for the future guests that I want to interview, so that while I'm in the middle of editing one, right, and getting that episode out, I have 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, because then you also run across the rescheduling aspect. What if somebody was scheduled for a certain day and you're being flexible, and at the same time they have to cancel on you for whatever reason, their schedule changes, life happens, and now your set time, even though you're being flexible, you're being overly flexible, waiting for them to change the date, and it still gives you time to maybe either fill in with another guest so that you can have a recording, still in the buffer, or just have the time to actually reschedule with that desired guest, record it, and still give you enough time, and not be like, oh, I recorded his information and I have to have that podcast out for next week, because I'm putting myself kind of like between the rock and a hard place. So that would be my advice to you. The how easy or hard it is really just comes down to your preparation and how you think about attacking it ahead of time. But my advice in a nutshell will be that if you're going to be interviewing people, because schedules are so frantic, you're going to need to be the flexible one, so that you can get the interviews that you want for your show. And I hope that helps. All right, so everybody's saying hi to Dr. Elo here. Randy's saying Sigma 60 to 600 would be awesome for the Nikon. It's one heavy lens. Yes, it's almost 6 pounds, 5.5 pounds. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Let me just check this. It says it's actually easy. That's funny, Paul. It says, I would like to do a podcast with my director. Yeah, and you see, when it comes to podcasts are also a lot more like schedule based. So I produce a podcast with Ecamm called The Flow, and we record every Tuesday, and we pump out that edited content the week after, and it is scheduled so that every Tuesday 12 a.m. as soon as midnight hits on Tuesday, that file is uploaded and ready to go on your podcast listeners. So we have our Tuesday kind of like listeners, right? The people who are expecting to listen to our podcast on that day. And when it comes to podcasts, it's definitely helps to be way more consistent with the schedule. And I would recommend to give yourself a buffer for that. And also pre-plan breaks within the podcast, like I guess certain times where you're gonna have for yourself, and just go for it. Because even me right now, I haven't been able to edit them and start getting them as a podcast, but I've already know that I've recorded at least 8 episodes of it, waiting for me to just get my hands on it. So that's probably going to be set up for February, even though I had plans to have it ready for 2023 in January. Just knowing that I'm taking the steps that I need to do to reach that goal, whether it be a month, like a month late from what I wanted. But then I'm also not beating myself up, because there's a lot of things that are constantly pulling at me, like my son Aiden, who's pulling at me right now as I speak, trying to get my attention. Okay, thank you. Thank you, handsome. I appreciate you. Just wanted to give me something, There we go. Hey, Sly Mater says, hi, Lewis, fellow junkies. Happy Saturday. I'm gearing up to do a live. I'm thinking Fridays at midnight your time. Any words of advice? Go for it. And if anything, the only advice that I would give you is like, if that time frame doesn't work for you, find the one that does, because that's kind of like coming full circle as well of what I was talking about. I started the live streams here at midnight on Saturdays, so it's basically Sunday, right? And the reason why was because while I was doing all the repairs, still doing iPhone repairs and being on the road, it was the time that I had available to be consistent for the Camera Junkie crew. So because that was the time that I knew that I would have with the least amount of distractions and I could be the most consistent, is why I ended up choosing Saturday nights. And now it's trickled down from, you know, like 11 p.m. from midnight to 11, and now we're down to 10. And I feel like I'm working my way to prime time, you know, like I'm getting in there, and pretty soon I'm going to be like Saturday Night Live, you know, like every Saturday is going to be the big event at 9 o'clock or something. But it's just slowly working my way there with every single one of you. Kevin made it as well, saying hi to everyone. And Albert's here as well. Hey, I appreciate it. I haven't mentioned it, but yes, like Kevin says, has everyone remembered to hit that like button? It's absolutely free and it goes a long, long way. It's highly appreciated. Here's Randy's advice saying, have a pot of coffee ready. Randy, weren't you the one who told me that coffee actually dries out your mouth when you're doing live streams, so that it's not recommended to use coffee? And because of it, I kind of stopped doing the coffee thing during the live streams, and it has helped. I can't say, because the times that I have drunk coffee, I feel like I end up being even more thirsty during the live stream. So I've been doing pretty good, drinking water and staying hydrated. I would tell you, maybe take a nap. That could help, even if you're not like used to it, because just a little, 15 or 30-minute nap could really help get the juices going. And that's my advice from just remembering those late nights, right? Those late night live streams, some that would be 2 and 3 hours long, and we'd be up till 3 o'clock in the morning. I know the reason why that happened was because I was able to maybe take a nap beforehand, and just like, even if it's just laying down and like slowing your breath, it does so much. Says LOL Randy, but I'm still trying to figure everything else out. But yes, coffee will be on that list. Hey, we have Robert here. Says another rainy night in South California. Hello, MCJ fam. How are you doing, sir? All right, well, we've been 30 minutes into it. I'm not really doing a podcast recording, but I did want to talk about this new lens from Sigma. I'm always hyping up the Sigma lenses. This shot that you're seeing here, this is my Sigma 30mm f1.4. My main shot is my Sigma 16mm. And even going back to the days where I used to shoot Canon, when I was a Canonite, I used to love my Sigma lenses. I used to have this 18 to 200mm like hyper zoom. It was designed for APS-C, no image stabilization, but it was still so sharp. And because I feel, because most people don't know that if your lens has image stabilization and your shutter speed is too high, right? Kind of like that combination on certain cameras could lead to blurrier images or blurrier photos, because of the simple fact that you're trying to capture, like, it's almost like you're capturing the image before the lens could actually stabilize it. So you're catching the blur right in the middle. That's why some lenses are better to have no image stabilization. And when it comes to photography, so let me emphasize that when it comes to photography, sometimes it's better to not have image stabilization or be able to turn it off, for the reason that you would actually want your aperture and everything to be fixed, so that the image or the light that's hitting your sensor is like fixed hard. and allowing your shutter speed to be the fast action to basically counteract the shake that you would have in your hands or in the lens itself. So going back to film photography, before there was anything called image stabilization, you would stabilize an image by capturing that image or that moment with a fast shutter speed. And that is actually still till this day a tip that you could use, that if you're trying to get, or use a lens like the one that we're mentioning, the 60 to 600, at that 600 millimeter telephoto lens range, trying to get wildlife. And this one it's labeled to be a sports / wildlife lens. It's awesome that it has the ability, like I mentioned, to turn off the image stabilization, even though it has it on there for those types of scenarios. So going back to image quality from Sigma lenses, and they have their own specialized coatings, kind of like Zeiss and Sony themselves, but the colors and the sharpness that I get and that I've always gotten from Sigma lenses, I've always been very pleased with, never been disappointed. So when it comes to that aspect, I wouldn't have a problem recommending this lens. Now, Randy mentioned it a little while ago. This lens is heavy. It is a 5.5 pound lens, and I don't have this lens in my hand, but I can reference a couple of lenses that I do own. I own the 24 to 240 Sony, zoom lens. I also have a 135 APO, a 135 to 400 lens. It's an APO from Quantaray, and this is actually a Canon lens that is carried over and has been the only one that's survived this entire thing. It is from Canon's first digital cameras. Let me correct myself. It is from the first Canon autofocus cameras, but they were still film. They were not digital. That's why it's an APO lens, and it autofocuses, but it doesn't actually transmit, data to the camera itself, because there was nothing digital to record it onto. It had connections for the lens to actually be able to autofocus, but because it was recording the images on film, you do not record, EXIF data onto film. So that wasn't even added to the lens, and it stopped working on all of my digital Canon cameras. Excuse me. Talking about don't drink coffee to not dry out your voice, I take a sip of water and now my voice dries out. Okay, so the lens, being a film lens, was not being able to be utilized correctly with the Canon digital cameras, because they required all of that digital information, the EXIF data, to be recorded. And whenever I put it on my Canon cameras, it would die out. But I'm running off completely into a completely different conversation. Anyways, I'm still able to use that lens because the adapter that is Canon to Sony actually implements all of that information and is able to transmit that to the Sony. So now that lens, the 135 to 400, works phenomenally on it. But the thing about both of those lenses is that they're heavy. They are heavy, and that's what makes it really hard to carry them around. Now, I know if there's a exact use case or a photo shoot that I'm going to be doing kind of more purpose driven, I will probably put that in my bag, because I know I'm going to use it for a particular shot that I want to get. But besides that, this is not an everyday lens. And unfortunately, not even that 24 to 240, because it's a great lens, but because it's so heavy, and I really do mean it is heavy, you're getting over 5 pounds with all the glass that's in there, they're not the easiest to carry around all day. They're just not. So that's where this lens is. You really have to be into the wildlife, photography or the sports photography to be able to use this. It's also a variable aperture lens. So it starts at 4.6, but it also closes down to 6.3. So that's basically like your aperture range, and you're going to be shooting at 6.3 at the 600 millimeter zoom range. And even though it's sharp, I was informed that it is still sharper at the 600 millimeter range by stopping it down to maybe an f8, which is still giving it maybe another third of light less. And unfortunately, when it comes to long distance sports and wildlife photography, you're going to want as much light as possible, and that's just that. Now let me see. One of the things that I did mention is that this lens does have image stabilization. So if it comes to portraits and things like that, this is going to be a great lens for you because it is very versatile. Like, to be honest, 60 millimeters is just there past a 50. So you can start shooting at 60 millimeters and use that as an everyday type of lens. But like I said, the biggest drawback is the weight. Like, are you willing to carry like 6.5 pounds with the camera body on your hand all day or on your back? Because it really does make a difference. And the last lens that I used that was similar to that, well, actually not even similar to that, it was a 28 to 75, and it was the Sigma. No, not the Sigma. Tamron. Yes, it was when I was in Massachusetts. We were shooting a car show, and I had my 50 millimeter, and I felt like it just was a bit too tight to get the close shots that I wanted for the cars. And I was gonna go into use my 24 to 70 f4, my Zeiss lens, and Doc was like, no, check this out. And it's a 2.8, and with that extended range and the lower aperture, man, I got some really amazing images. And the lens was so light that I was able to use it for like the next 3 days. It didn't come off my camera, and that's where the difference really comes into play. Now, going back to the Sigma, this one is weather sealed, so that's really good, especially that this is a full frame lens as well. So it is for full frame cameras, and most of Sony's full frame cameras are weather sealed. And if you're going to be using it for wildlife and outdoor, then definitely you're going to want some type of weather sealing to protect your investment. Another great thing about this lens is that it has linear focus motors. So it's going to have a nice, fast and snappy autofocus, and that's really good for wildlife. You're going to be moving that thing around fast, but that's where I don't know how fast you can whip that thing around at close to 6 pounds. And the last thing is the price. The price is close to it's $2,000. It's $1,999, and you would know if that really sits within your budget or not. But it is a very interesting lens, and it just so happens to kind of undercut one of Sony's latest rumors, which is Sony is rumored to be coming out with a new fixed 500 millimeter G Master lens. Now, a 500 millimeter G Master GM, I would say that the highest aperture that I've seen in any G Master lens is 2.8. So take that with a grain of salt. I haven't really looked into any more information about this rumored lens, but if it's got the GM moniker on it, right, a 500 millimeter, I would say it's probably going to be a 2.8 500 millimeter, which is bonkers when it comes to the amount of light that you're going to be allowing into your sensor with that type of setup. Another rumor that's kind of like part of that new 500 millimeter lens is that Sony is also coming out with their first, officially Sony branded speed booster. Almost forgot the name. Yeah, so a Sony branded speed booster that is gonna allow you to take your full frame lenses from Sony and speed boost them to an APS-C type sensor. So this could come into play because if you got a speed booster, they usually come with some type of magnification, and if not magnification, well, it will be kind of like condensing the amount of light, or kind of doubling up the amount of light, because speed boosters traditionally kind of give you a light boost. In my previous experience with speed boosters, I've used the Metabone speed boosters that were adapting Canon full frame lenses to Sony cameras, and that speed booster would also add like a third or maybe even a half a stop of light. So if you were using an f2.8, you would actually receive like an f2.0 type of like lighting image, and you would actually be able to like lower your ISO to get an even cleaner image. So that's where I'm like kind of like hopeful for that little setup, because a speed booster that will allow you to get full frame results with those lenses and get even higher light outputs from these amazing full frame lenses in Sony's lineup, but be able to attach them to the APS-C and get, you know, perfect results. Very nice. Very nice. It's something to be excited for, because the last piece of that puzzle, right, of that set of rumors, is that there is a new flagship camera from Sony coming out soon. A new flagship APS-C battery that can best utilize this new speed booster and all of the full frame lenses. So fingers crossed. It's hypothetically rumored to be the A8000 series. Like they might skip the 7000 series, and that just maybe because they've named the A7 series and probably don't want any confusion there. But these are rumors, so like I said, take it with a grain of salt. And the rumors are a new 500mm G Master lens from Sony, a speed booster from Sony, and a new flagship APS-C camera. And from what I had talked about weeks ago, I'm really hoping that it's like a new, you know, 26 point something megapixel, you know, sensor, kind of like on the FX30, and then have all the new, you know, like all the new bells and whistles, all the new autofocus features, the new menus, the whole thing in a new flagship APS-C camera that's designed primarily for photography, but it's gonna have all of the video features. As you know, that Sony really does not hold out in that aspect. So that's my thoughts on this lens and these lenses. I'm really excited for what we're gonna have available to us, and you know, sprinkling this in as well. I'm having a lot of fun with this ZV-1F, you know, and the way that I've been using it, you know, hint hint, is just like this. I actually put a step up ring from the 40.5mm to 52mm, allowing me to attach the wide lens, or the wide angle lens adapter. So now if someone were to feel that this camera is not wide enough for vlogging, definitely it's wide enough with this lens adapter. And at the end of the day, this contrast based autofocus is not the worst. Like, I'm not gonna say that it's the best, like my phase auto detection, you know, type of cameras, but the software that this camera has, and the fact that it's still doing eye detection autofocus, 4K, and it's not the, you know, the new high-tech phase detection autofocus. I'm really impressed with how well this camera works and the images that I've been able to get out of it. So no complaints, man. And the biggest thing, like I mentioned here a lot, is bad audio is unwatchable, and that little camera is giving me good audio without having to carry around a whole nother set of microphones. So that makes another like world of difference. So that camera's impressed me, and I'm just gonna hope on Sony to keep knocking them out of the park. Like, all of these camera companies are really coming out with a lot of new gear. You know, the Sony R6 Mark II, not Sony, listen to me, Canon R6 Mark II has really got a lot of great specs. Last week we just talked about the Panasonic, the new S5 II that they came out with, and that's also another amazing piece of kit, another piece of tech that if you're in that ecosystem, it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? For the price and what you get out of it. So at the end of the day, we're all winners. We're all winners when any camera company comes out with a new lens or new camera body, because the technology that they're always pushing the envelope, we're the ones who actually benefit the most. So whenever another camera company like Canon, or now also Panasonic, you know, Nikon comes out with a good camera body, is just gives that little boost to the ecosystem that you're on to try to catch up or exceed that. So it's always exciting. This is Cafecito. I love Sigmas. I've been using Sigma for so many years. Yeah, so. And like I said, I don't have anything against all these other lenses. I'm a camera junkie. I love my vintage lenses, right? I was talking to someone about it as well. That over here in the back, oh, wrong shot. But in the back over here in the shelf, I have my Fujifilm, the X-T1, right? And that's a camera that now is officially 10 years old because it came out in 2013. And that's a 16.1 megapixel. It's got the film emulations, and I use it for a lot of my own personal, photography. I got a lot of photos of Aiden there. And one of the things that I love doing the most is taking out that camera and using my vintage lenses on it, full manual, and applying the colors that I'm getting from those lenses onto that sensor, the X-Trans sensor that is renowned to be one of the more film emulation type sensors that we've been able to create or have available to us. So I really do like the combination of the vintage lenses with a film simulation and basically JPEGs, right, straight out of the camera, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. So all of this gear, and like I always say, upgrade your skills before your gear. It's all great if you know that it's gonna, fulfill the need for something that you have. But to get gear just to get it, just because it's new, I really think that's redundant, because pretty soon you're gonna end up like Marcus Pix. That's so funny that I mentioned him. Those of you who don't know, there's this YouTube creator named Marcus Pix, and he basically has an abundance of camera gear, lights, setups, and is constantly buying new, latest and greatest stuff. And so what he does with his channel, he just basically ends up giving away all the stuff that he doesn't use. So if you haven't heard of him, you could check him out. Like him and his wife make interesting content. And a lot of it has to do with their giveaways. So if you have heard of them, then you understand the reference that sometimes if you end up buying all the gear just because it's new, you'll pretty much end up to the point where you have so much stuff where you're not using any of it, and you get to a point where you're just giving it away just so that you can kind of concentrate and focus on the pieces of gear that allow you to create the most. Kevin says, better have a good monopod or a tripod and throw that thing over your shoulder if you want to be moving around a lot. Absolutely. Oh, and that's another good thing about this lens. It actually has the lens mount, right? So that you can put it on the tripod, but it has a built-in Arca Swiss into it, which is really cool because that was kind of like a no-brainer, right? I have a couple of lenses that have that mount, and you have to add an adapter to it to use it with your, tripod. It's kind of redundant when everyone's been using the Arca Swiss. So that's another cool feature on this new Sigma 1660 to 600 millimeter lens that I thought was really cool. Carrying that weight when it's shooting wildlife and hiking in and out is not fun. Exactly, right? Especially when it comes to wildlife. And that's where I say you have to know that thing. Like, I know some wildlife photographers who shoot micro four thirds. And the reason why they shoot micro four thirds is because they can carry around a small little camera. And then because of the 2x, crop factor magnification, a 50 millimeter lens is 150 millimeters, right? Or 100 millimeters. A 200 is 400 and a 400 is 800, right? So you're literally just basically doubling the amount on that factor, and he can carry around a piece of kit that weighs about a couple of pounds, and he can fit anywhere in his bag and still able to capture full res, high quality. And I believe it's a 24 megapixel that he uses, but I digress. 24 megapixel images at 800 millimeters because he's using a small little kit. So it just depends on how you're using it and what you're photographing, that the kit should be catered to what you do. Richard says a 2.8 500 millimeter, the cost. Oh, well, the cost, that's totally different, because I was just looking up at the Sigma lenses and they have one. I think it's a 1200 millimeter. This thing looks like a bazooka and it's like $26,000. So the price on this one, you think so? Look, she says a cost, I'm guessing 12 grand. The Canon RF 2.8 400 millimeter L is $12,000. Wow. Let me just put that back up there again, because that is serious loot, right? Well, then that goes to show you, like, that's, if you're talking about $12,000 for a 400 millimeter lens, right? Then that's where this Sigma lens, going back to it, really does have a place, because the fact that it's just $2,000 and you can get a 600 millimeter image, not bad. Just saying. Says maybe I could be a live-in. What? I could be a live-in moderator or live-in moderator. I think live was the correct pronunciation for that. And Rubber says, I love my vintage glass. I shoot micro four thirds so I can adapt it and use all kinds of vintage lenses. You see, here's another example. Says, but my prime set is fully manual Mikey Cine style primes. See, look at that. And that's got to be a great setup, right? And not really have any issues. And we all do this to ourselves. And I guess I'll just leave you guys with that. Like, we all do this to ourselves. We're the ones who see something that we like and we want it. And at the end of the day, it's not bad, right? Because there's a lot of people who do a lot of things that don't even try to recoup any kind of funds from it. For example, I used to shoot paintball every Saturday for God knows how long. And it was just like my Saturday routine. It was like, go out to this private paintball club and then just spend money on paint that was literally being used up as I played the games. And I could tell you, like, if I could go back now, I'd be like, oh, I would have invested it in other things. But at the same time, I invested it into what I enjoyed the most, and I felt like that was an adequate, use of my funds at that time. So if you do have the means, and at the end of the day you just want it because you can, more power to you. But I also, like to say that know exactly what it is that you need, and just don't go for everything, because of the simple fact that you need to upgrade your skills before your gear, so that way you know the gear that you want. And then when you see something that you really desire, it shouldn't be a problem for you to just pull the trigger, because you know that you didn't overindulge by buying unnecessary things, buying equipment and stuff that you're really not using it just because it's new. And I guess that's the way that I feel, right? Like, I know that I have my equipment and I'm very happy with it, but I know that if something, knock your socks were to come off and I'm like, I really want that above all else, I'm gonna end up finding the way to get it, just because I know that I've said no to so many other things, that when I decide that I'm gonna say yes to something, it's gonna be a lot easier for me to pull the trigger, I guess, like without remorse. Hey, that could just be it. Oh, Kathy made it. Saying hey to the Camera Junkies. How you doing, Kathy? It says big difference in f2.8 to f6. Yeah, 6.3. Whatever. It is true, but it just depends, right? Like, it depends on your situation. If you're shooting a celebrity wedding, right? And that's like your opportunity, rent it, get your hands on the best equipment possible, so that is not a hindrance to you and that you don't have to like work around it. But when it comes to sports photography, or better said, more wildlife, right? Unless that's paying the bills and you're doing it as a hobby, like I used to do paintball, I would just tell you, consider the better priced options like the Sigma comparative to a $12,000 lens. All right. Gretchen says the cost of those long primes is why I rent them for those occasion extreme uses. Absolutely. Paint in CO2 was not cheap back then. Oh, so Kevin is talking, paintball terms, man. Every Saturday I was buying 2 cases of paint. Not bags, cases of paint alone, and that had nothing to do with maintenance and then buying J&J ceramic barrels and bigger tanks and extensions and camouflage gear and I used to have a oh my god, this is taking me back. I used to have a face mask that had a vortex fan built into it that I would clip on during the games to constantly be pumping fresh air into my goggles so that they wouldn't fog up. To that detail, right? That's what I tell you. Like, when I went in like even a fan on my mask to keep it from fogging. So imagine how my gun and everything else was set up. It was just like craziness. Now, like I said, I had a lot of fun and I indulged in that. But at the same time, I spent money not looking for it to have a return at all. So there's some of us who are in that field and are just indulging and partaking in a hobby that they enjoy and that they get a lot back from, right? Whether it's pure enjoyment of photography. I speak to Gretchen all the time, and she doesn't spend all of her funds on the actual equipment because she's spending it on safaris to go to Africa and get the amazing images with the equipment that she already has, which is another prime example. Like, spend it on the correct things, on the experiences, on the journeys, on the trips, if you can, right? Because that's where you're gonna get, like, the best landscape photography is when you leave your neck of the woods, is when you leave your home and your area and start exploring out there. So that could be another great tip, to just invest in your experiences and not so much the gear. Says, so a lot of us have seen a lot of each other in the past 12 hours. You wouldn't say, Paul? I see you more than family as far as hours of the week go. Kathy says, I need to record this anti-gas speech and have it come up every time I open up VH photo site. You know what? I need to mark it and clip it out and see if I make a short out of it. Like, you don't need the latest and greatest. You just need to work at what you got. It says, exactly. Make the most of what works for you in your situation, especially when it's not paying the bills, right? Like, if it's not paying the bills, just like compartmentalize it to what it should be, you know, and that's it. That's it. Compartmentalize it and know if it's a hobby and this is something that you like, just know that there's some people who like smoking crack, and that's the thing. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of it, but like, I had to just throw that little joke in there, right? Like, it just depends on what you want to invest your funds on, what makes you happy. What makes you happy. Robert says, I will rent the Sigma 60 to 600, which will become an insane 120 to 1200 millimeter on the GH6, just for fun. Astro work. See, look at that. And you say astral work, man, you're gonna know what's on the surface on one of the meteors on one of the rings of Saturn. Like, you're gonna be able to just pinpoint that thing and be like, look, there's a letter. It says, maybe that means you and Paul are family, not in blood sense, but in a different way. Kathy says, no, I didn't. Exactly. Also weird. It says, why'd you go there? It was just a joke. You understand? I guess I was watching a little bit too much Dave Chappelle, which, on another note, absolutely love his comedy. He's hilarious. So, but everyone, thank you as always for hanging out. We did it. Another successful weekly live stream, and it's all said and done. As always, I want to thank you for taking the time and hanging out here with me. If you haven't done so already and you forgot, please be sure to hit that like button. It really does go a long way, and it is highly appreciated. I did want to finish up with Cities Gone, right? So we're going to do it. And why is that off center? That's not cool. Come on. All right, so let's just take that off. And this week's Cities Gone, channels that I think you should go and watch, is someone actually made a video about this not too long ago, but there's a couple of guys that I've mentioned here before, which is the fellas from DP Review. And if you haven't checked them out, I highly do recommend them. Great information. I love their banter, their jokes, their on-screen chemistry between these two is, like, to me, second to none. I absolutely love all of their content, and if you're an avid listener, you'll be catching a lot of funny comments and puns slipped in there in between the great information that they give on camera, lenses, accessories, bodies, and everything like that. These two guys started in another channel called the Camera Store, so they gained a lot of popularity for that YouTube channel, because that YouTube channel was literally run from a Canadian camera store. So the Camera Store where they worked at had a YouTube channel where they made a lot of content for, and that's where their, I guess, popularity and like rise to fame came about. And then they were hired by the DP Review crew, and now they're basically signature of that brand, and they create all of the videos for this new channel, and they've just been crushing it. So if you haven't checked it out already, I would definitely tell you to check out the DP Review guys and all of their content on their YouTube channel, DP Reviews. This week's Cities Gone channels that I think you should go and watch. Yeah, I find them hilarious. All right. And we did it. Back to the main shot. There we go. That is a successfully completed Camera Junkie live stream. with cities got included. As everyone, that came out wrong. Everyone, thank you once again for hanging out. We're going to be doing it all over again next week. We got things going for that next week, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, as we always do. We're going to be at episode 112. They just keep stacking up on each other, and pretty soon we're going to be at 200. So if you haven't done so already, if you're new here, please make sure to like, subscribe, so that you don't miss out any future episodes of the Camera Junkie live stream and the content that I create on this channel. Everyone, take care of yourselves and each other, and I can't wait to see all of your smiling faces next week right here on the Camera Junkie live stream. Have a great week. See you then.